Five, four, three, two, one.
All right. Hello, willkommen, bienvenue, konnichiwa, ni hao, jambo, marhaba, arve. It's time for the Armist Inquisition yet again, episode 206 on Sunday, the 7th of November, 2021. I'm Armish Phil, and tonight I've got Tarrant Firestride, aka the Mad Hatter, joining me. How are you doing, Tarrant?
I'm well, thanks. Glad to be here, man. How are you?
Absolutely wonderful. My two co-hosts bailed on me. One like 2 days ago and one about 3 minutes before we started to record.
Well, they heard you were on with the Hatter and they didn't want any part of it.
No,
so.
Don't take it personally. One of them, his wife's away, so he's looking after the kids. And Armish Ben's just got a new puppy. So he's stuck on puppy duties tonight. But,
I don't envy the puppy. The kid, I'll take the kids, man, but the puppy's it's a tough night at the office.
No, I've never had our two dogs have been rescue dogs, so they've luckily both been house trained and good to go. Because I mean, especially with young kids knocking about, I couldn't be dealing with the potty training, the doggy potty training, house training.
It's absolute chaos. It's absolute chaos.
Anyway, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for joining me tonight. And
glad to be here.
Yeah, it's you're well into sort of comparative religion, alchemy, hermeticism. I mean, to the average bloke on the street, this is quite an unusual sort of area of research or pastime, however you would describe it. I mean, what was your sort of introduction to this sort of stuff? How did you get into it in the first place?
Well, it started pretty early. I had organized religion shoved down my throat pretty hard as a child. I had Mormonism on one side and Christianity on the other side, and so around my stepdad, I was supposed to be Mormon. Around mom's family, I was supposed to be Christian, and so that was very, very confusing as far as self-identity, as a kid. And there was a lot of trauma that took place in my childhood. And so I left home really early and kind of put all things religion and spiritual in the same box as the abuse that I went through as a kid, and kind of just ran from all of it. And I always knew that there was something, bigger than me. And I had this victim mentality. Like, I got dealt a bad hand and was just upset and angry and resentful all the time. And so on my perpetual search for what is bigger than me, I stumbled upon alchemy and hermeticism, and this crystals kind of opened the door to all this. I was taught that crystals were really taboo as a child, and that was not something that was of the light. I was taught that it was really bad. And so learning about crystals and vibrations and, frequency kind of opened a lot of doors for me. I realized, well, I was taught that this was terrible and this isn't bad, so what else is there? And so I just started searching and then finding the Hermetic teachings, and finding alchemy is kind of what led me to Hermeticism. I realized that I could transmute these things. I'm a big believer that negative energy, once you absorb this negative energy, it's there. There is no such thing as releasing it, but you can transmute it, right? You can use that and change this lead that the world gives you, or that this experience gives you, and turn it into something favorable. And this was an intriguing idea to me, this transmutation, which is...
So I was going to say, it's this sort of idea that energy can't be created or destroyed. It can just be transformed or transmuted. Is that what the sort of idea?
Exactly, just changed. And so it was, hermeticism was a way for me to kind of empower myself and take control of my life, because one thing that it teaches is that you are either a master of your experience or you are a victim of somebody else's experience, right? And so I was in this victim mentality, this vibration of victimhood, and everything was because of somebody else. And my life was this way because I got dealt a bad hand. And so I was kind of just along for the ride and getting beat up by this experience. I used to say things like, oh, well, bad stuff just happens to me all the time, or I have the worst luck. Wow. And bad stuff did happen to me all the time. I mean, my life was just this ball of chaos that snowballed into, I was a daily drinker since about 12. God. When I put it down 3 years ago, I was doing about a half gallon a day. I mean, I was just a walking, just a ball of garbage, really, for a lack of a better way to describe what my experience was. Like, I had two thoughts when I woke up every morning, and that was, shoot, I woke up. That was thought number one. And then thought number two was, how am I going to afford to drink today? Because if I don't get liquor, I'm going to get sick, and that's not how I want to go out. Right. And so it was tough. And I had tried to quit drinking a lot of times before that, and it was really stupid. What would scare me was like the fact that I was never going to be able to toast on New Year's, or at a wedding when they pass around a toast or whatever, like they were going to stop and put water in my cup, and everybody was going to see that, right? That I was just going to be, I was that guy for the rest of my life. And it scared me. And what made the big difference the last time I quit was like, I don't need to worry about New Year's Eve 10 years down the road, right? That's not what's important in my experience right now. What's important in my experience right now is that if I don't start taking better care of myself, I'm going to die. Right. And so kind of taking control of my experience started with me getting away from the crutches that I had carried around for my whole life. And alchemy was critical in that. I realized that I couldn't change my childhood, and I couldn't change who my parents were, and I couldn't change who I was for the first almost 30 years of my life, right? But I could use those things to propel myself into a more favorable future. And so that's where alchemy came in. And as I call this place Earth School, this experience is, I refer to it as Earth School. Yeah. And all you get at Earth School is lead. That's all this place gives you. And so it's our job, the initiate or the alchemist, to transmute these things into a favorable experience. And I'm a very matter of fact, I have to be able to replicate something for me to not necessarily believe in it, but for me to practice it, I have to be able to do something with my own hands. And there's 7 principles of Hermeticism. It's very simple, right? And they're very, very simple principles, but they're giant, and one cool thing about alchemy is nothing is absolute. So you read something and you read it one way, and that same statement can be read 40 different ways and mean 40 different things. Everything is a metaphor, everything is an allegory, and there's always another layer, right? And so people talk about alchemy a lot, and there's lots of different types of alchemy. You have metallurgy, right, which is the act of physically taking lead and changing that into gold, is what all the ancient alchemists wrote about. This is the prima materia, or the emerald tablets was this, the prima materia was this mystical substance, or some people think that it was just this gnosis that people had that gave these people the ability to transmute this unfavorable metal into literal gold, right? And if we could take lead and turn it into gold, that'd be a pretty cool deal.
What's the name of that? The prima
materia.
Right. Now, would this be similar to what some people would call ether or astral light? Are we talking about the same thing here?
This is how I see it. is that there is this, and I mean, nobody really knows. I think that anybody that talks in absolutes about stuff like this is either lying to you or lying to themselves.
Yeah.
That we can have an intuitive sense of knowing for ourselves, but I think that it's unfair to represent it that way to other people. That and that's one cool thing about Hermeticism, is that one of the principles states that all truths are but half truths. Everything is subjective. And that's something that's huge to me. You know, you read the allegory of the cave, and these people were all seeing the same thing, but it was very different truths to them, you know, and none of them were lying per se, right? They were just, their truth was different. And so when you read these old alchemical texts, it's talking about metal, but that metal can be whatever you need it to be to improve your experience. That metal can be your emotions, or that metal can be the way that you walk through your life. That metal can be, I've alchemized my occupation, you know, and I had a really hard time staying motivated. And I love what I do, but it's hard. And I sound like a child when I say this, but it's hard to get up and do the same thing every day, right? And stay happy. It's, even if you love what you do, like, I would rather be out in the woods connecting with nature or with the divine, right, than at work using my back or using, you know. But me alchemizing that and saying, okay, so I'm taking raw materials, right, that are unfavorable in their current state, or I'm taking a rundown house, right? These things are lead. I'm taking an idea that someone has in their head, right, for this space, whether it's a patio cover or whether it's a deck. They have this idea, and we can talk about the principle of mentalism in just a second. But everything starts in the mind, right? So they have this idea that exists, and it only exists in their brain at this point, right? So I get to take that idea and I get to transmute that idea with these raw materials, or this leaky roof, or this wall that's full of mold, and I get to transmute those things into something physical, right, and practical and palpable, that is going to change the quality and the trajectory of this person's life, right?
Yeah.
And that's huge to me. That's something I can be proud of. That's something that I can put my energy into every day, as I'm changing lives, right? If I create a new living room or a new area for somebody, that the first thing that they're going to experience when they come home every day is this space that I've created, right? And it can either make or break the trajectory of this person's life. And I know it sounds really mundane to say, like, well, I did their living room and I feel like I changed somebody's life. But if you change the way that somebody sees their experience or their surroundings or their life overall, it's going to change the way that they vibrate, and those vibrations are going to change what they experience. So really, by changing someone's mindset or state of happiness, you really can change the whole trajectory of their experience. And that's beautiful to me.
Absolutely.
When you roof a house, right, nobody looks at the roof, but it's like, this is protecting everything that this person has traded their time and energy for, because that's what an undertaking or a job is you're exchanging your time and your energy for Federal Reserve banknotes that you're going to spend, you know, on a place to live, or on a car, or on, you know, material comfort things, you know. And what I do protects all that. And so someone is trusting me with their most valuable possessions, or the home that they live in, that keep their shelter, right? And they're giving that responsibility to me and allowing me to transmute that into something that's going to create a more favorable experience for them. So alchemy is everything.
Yeah, again, going back to the man on the street, if you say alchemy, they think of the old sort of 15th, 16th, 17th century, you know, scientists trying to convert lead to gold. But the way you're describing it is, it's something that's applicable in pretty much any walk of life. You're
Absolutely.
talking, you know, whether it's spiritual alchemy, or even bringing into what you may feel is quite a mundane thing, like your job. But you were talking about your job there, and I'm in the same sort of boat. I'm self-employed tradesman as well. So when we do a job, we have something that's tangible at the end of it. We can derive satisfaction from that, and we can use this sort of alchemical change our perceptions in this way to find value in what we do as to earn the Federal Reserve banknotes. And I was just thinking, there must be so many people out there who can't do that. You know, these sort of jobs that are about now where they're usually in an office or sat behind a desk or doing spreadsheets. I think we're lucky in a sense. I think our jobs are more susceptible to being alchemized. Would that make sense?
Right. And I don't think that that's coincidental either. So I wrote my freshman thesis on public school as a manufacturing facility, right? And they take in all of these different materials and they try to punch them into the same product, right? And if you can't be punched into this exact same product as everybody else, then you kind of end up an outcast and you end up in a less favorable situation, whether it's hanging out with kids that are going to get you in trouble, or you end up in the prison system, or you end up depressed and then they end up on pharmaceuticals or whatever. You know, this system is created to put everyone in this box, and this box is to take in information and then regurgitate the same information. It's not about thinking. We're not taught to think critically or to question things or to grow or to change things. They have a system and this is the way that they want it. And I think that a lot of the people that can't conform that way mentally end up kind of doing stuff like we have done, and we end up self-employed, and we end up kind of the outcasts of the industry. Not that there's anything wrong with being self-employed, because I think everyone should be self-employed, or at least working towards self-employment, right? Which is why I encourage everyone to learn a trade, because you know, all currency it's two words. It's the word current and the word sea. And so the current is the flow of energy through a body of water, and a sea is just a large body of water. So we're not talking about money when we're talking about currency. We're talking about energy and how it's flowing through our experience, right? And all a Federal Reserve banknote is a gift card for somebody else's energy, right? And so you're trading a lot of your energy for a little bit of paper energy that you're going to trade for somebody else's energy, right?
Yeah, at the store, yeah.
Right. And so when you talk about gold, this is an example I like to use. Like, gold isn't expensive because it's pretty or it makes good jewelry. Gold is expensive because it's hard to get. And so when you buy gold, you're not really buying the gold, you're buying the right to transport the gold. Okay. You're buying the guy with the pitchfork in the wheelbarrow who goes up and beats it out of the earth and then smelts it down into a bar and then packs it back to town and then distributes it, you know? And then if you were to buy that gold and resell that gold at a higher price, then they're buying your energy at that point, right? That energetic exchange is what they're buying. They're not necessarily buying the gold, because all you're doing is transporting the gold, right? It's the energy that you're purchasing. And so when you look at it like that, the value is actually the employee, right? The value is the carpenter, or the value is, even if you're stocking shelves, you are the value. If you don't put that item on the shelf, then nobody can come and buy that item with their energy, right? And so the way that business is designed, unfortunately, is through creating a model of scarcity, right? And creating value through a system of supply and demand. And the problem with creating value with a system of supply and demand is that when you are when something gets valuable because there's not enough for everybody to have it, then for you to increase your wealth or your value, then someone else has to decrease theirs, right? As opposed to living by a model of abundance where everyone can be prosperous. And so these jobs are set up to make the person at the top all of the money, even though it's the people at the bottom who are creating all the value. And so when you learn a trade and you can figure out how to be self-employed, you're kind of taking that big man at the top out of the picture.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you are the value and you're being paid to be the value, but you can't do that when you're working in a machine, which is what most of these corporations are, is just machines. And you have these people who have been basically sold into debt slavery. You know, you've got to pay rent, you've got to have a car to drive, you've got to buy gas at $4 a gallon, you know, so you got to get that money somewhere. And we're taught that how you get that money is you go get a job, right? And you work for somebody else. And so part of alchemizing your experience is taking full control of your experience. You can't maximize the efficiency of your energetic exchange if somebody else is in control of that energetic exchange, right? And so moving away from the system of normal, and that's another thing that drew me to alchemy, was I don't fit in boxes, right? I'm not a normal person, and I never have been. And every time somebody tried to categorize me as something, it made me want to act like, you know, the other, just to not fit into that box. And so a big part of alchemy for me is owning your experience, right? And living your experience the way that you feel like you should be living that experience. Because again, you're either a master of your experience or a victim of somebody else's. And that's kind of a harsh way to look at it, but you're either dictating what's happening around you or somebody else's. You know, when it comes down to it, somebody is in control. And I don't believe there's a neutral in this experience. You're either going forward or you're going backwards. You're either a part of the problem or you're part of the solution. You're either actively improving your experience or you're allowing somebody else's experience to be improved at your expense, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to take control, right, and empower the self can actually empower the people around you. We're taught that it's selfish to do work on yourself or to put yourself first. But I'm of the mind that if you're not operating at 100%, you're no good to anybody. How can you help somebody else if you haven't helped yourself? Just like how can you love someone else if you haven't learned how to love yourself, right? Yeah. And I think that that's where all of this starts is love and self-love, because there has to be a why to put with the what. The what is we want to improve our life, right? We want things to get better. That's what we're trying to do. But there has to be a why so that you have the energy to put into the what. And so if that why is self-love, because I love myself and I deserve more than this, right? I don't deserve to be unhappy. I deserve to live a favorable experience. Okay. What am I going to do to achieve this why? Now you have a reason. Now you have a place to come because you are worth it, right? And I think that a lot of people that get stuck in these low vibration states are because they think that's what they deserve. I know I did, right? I had it instilled in me at a very young age that that's the way I deserve to get treated and that's the way that I deserve to feel. And so you got to break that, you know?
Does it start with perception then? Is this sort of one of the key starting points is trying to change your perception of the world around you, of yourself through introspection and through your relationships, whether that be with family or friends or an employee or employer rather? Is that the first sort of starting point? Is trying to change how you look at the world around you?
Yeah, and I would encourage. Here's the thing: like a big part of Hermeticism is things just are. Okay. And perception is crucial because there's ups and downs in this experience, right? This place is a roller coaster and you can't change the way that things are going to happen around you per se, right? There are things in all of our experiences that are outside of our control, right? But what you can change is the way that you perceive those things or the way that you allow those things to affect your experience.
The way you react.
Exactly.
It's the one thing.
Exactly.
This is something I learned a few years ago. I don't know. I think it was maybe probably when my eldest child was born, or around that sort of age when I really started maturing. Because in the main, I don't think men sort of mature until they're about 30 as a rule.
Exactly. Exactly. We're big kids, man.
Yeah. Peter Pan. It's Peter Pan syndrome. But I remember being about that
pirate ship on the neck.
Yeah. I remember being about that age and thinking, I don't know whether something had gone wrong or whatever, but just sort of came to this realization. I don't know whether I'd heard it somewhere else first, whether I was primed to it or what, or whether it was on a podcast. I have no idea, but I just had this sort of realization that you can't change that, which is that bad thing, which has just happened. The only thing you have control over is your reaction to it.
Exactly. And then how you choose to let that affect the trajectory of your experience, because you have cause and effect, right? What you do now is going to determine your experience tomorrow, right? And so you can't change these things that are happening around you, but you can change the way that you allow them to affect what's happening in front of you.
It must be really hard to get out, if you're in a real bad rut as an individual, it must be really hard to get that sort of kickstart.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, you mentioned about, did you say it was about 3 years ago when you stopped drinking?
Yep. October 2nd.
Was there like a catalyst? Was there a eureka moment? Was there an event or something that sort of was a game changer for you?
So what's weird is most people will have like a rock bottom experience, right? Like they wreck their car or whatever, they get a DUI or their husband leaves them or whatever, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna quit drinking. My rock bottom was like a decade, right? There was no one event. There was just this me living this miserable existence. And I think I was kind of just trying to drink myself to death is what I was trying to do. And what really, I said that crystals was the first thing that kind of opened my eyes to all this, but what opened my eyes to this whole world, right? This esoteric part of the experience that we live was, learning about a Saturn return. So are you familiar with the idea of a Saturn return?
No, explain.
Okay. So every 29 and a half to 30 years, Saturn ends up in the exact same place that it was in when you were born.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah. It's ringing the bell now. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had no clue about anything astrological. And that's something that I'm still really trying to learn, but trying to ingest slowly. There's just so much to astrology. And I'm kind of partial to sidereal astrology, which just makes it that much more complicated. But so I woke up on October 2nd, and it just something clicked, right? And I realized that I was 29 and I was in the exact same boat that I was in when I was 15. I was making great money, right? But I wanted to quit at 2:00 every day to go get hammered. I was unhappy. I couldn't pay my bills, even though I was making all this money. And I'm like, dude, it was like this flash. And I realized that 15 years had gone by and nothing had changed. I was making more money, but I was drinking more, you know? And I was just done. I just woke up and I was done. And I was drinking so much that I couldn't just quit. Alcohol is one of two things.
Sorry, it would have been physically dangerous, would it? Like Amy Winehouse, I think that's why she died.
Yeah. If I didn't have a drink by 9:00 in the morning, then I couldn't function. Okay. It was rough, man. It was rough. I was the guy that went to work with airplane bottles in my pocket so that I could, when nobody was looking on the roof, you know, I'd do a shot at 8:00, an hour after work, do a shot at 10:00, do a shot at 12:00, you know?
Oh my God.
And it was, I never got buzzed or got drunk just because my body didn't process it the same way. So I was like what I would consider sober. And then there would be like a 3-hour period of me just slamming as much liquor into my body as I could. And then there was like blackout, basically. There was no enjoyment phase anymore. And I just realized that like, this wasn't going to change. This wasn't going to change. And so I went to the doctor and basically said, listen, I want you to give me 11 diazepams. I said, I need 4 for the first day, 3 for the second day, 2 for the third day, and 1 for the 2 days after that. I said, I don't want to go to treatment. I want to not have a seizure while my body withdraws. Right. And the lady was like kind of impressed at the amount of research that I had done about what I needed or whatever. And she's like, listen, it's very counterintuitive for me to write an addict a prescription for something that he can get addicted to, you know? But she goes, but I think you're for real and I'm going to do this. And I'm going to do it once. And she goes, don't ever ask me for anything again from this point on, you know? And she gave me a chance, man. And I still, very grateful for the doctor who was sitting there because they could have said, you know, no, you need to go to rehab or you need to whatever, but she gave me a chance. And I've used that chance, you know, I took it seriously and, I haven't had a drop. Man, I haven't had a drop since October 2nd. And what was crazy was after about a week, I realized that the hardest part was not knowing what to do with myself, right? I would just sit around and drink, and that's what would pass the time. And so now that I didn't have this pastime, it was like I had all this time that I didn't know what to do with, and I had no idea what I liked or what I was into or what I enjoyed, because what I enjoyed was sitting on the porch smoking cigarettes and drinking liquor, you know. And so then I realized I liked to mow the lawn, and I realized that I liked art, and I realized that I liked to read, and all this stuff that I just couldn't stand doing. I like to cook. I love to cook. You know, there was over the next 3 months, like all this stuff started popping up. And what was crazy was after about, because I told you, I went into it with the mindset that was like 10 years doesn't matter. Next year doesn't matter. You know, we can reevaluate whether we're going to drink again in 5 years, you know, but what needs to happen right now is this sobriety. And after about a month, I wanted nothing to do with it. There were no cravings, there were no urges, but I found this self-love thing, man, was the key. Was it clicked. And I was like, wait, this is what it feels like to care, you know, and this is what it feels like to be willing to invest in something, right? Because at that point I was willing to invest in the self, and I was willing to, I realized I was finally starting to feel better. I was taking better care of myself, and I was feeling better, right? And these emotions that I was having to deal with, because I had just buried everything since I was 13 years old. You know, I had, as a 30-year-old man, I had to realize I had to learn how to process my emotions. And you know, I was very violent for most of my life. I fought everybody. When I was a kid, man, I fought every weekend. It didn't matter who, it didn't matter what. It was like I had this little man syndrome. My stepdad beat me up pretty good from the time that I was 6 or 7 years old. And so that was how I learned to deal with things, right? And that was how I learned to validate myself, was through physical violence. I'd find the biggest guy at the party, and we were going to engage in some fisticuffs, you know? And so learning how to communicate with people, and how to calmly process things, and how to handle things without punching somebody in the face. Like, these are all things that you learn at 12, 13 years old. And I'm trying to learn them at 30. And I had to humble myself before this experience and just kind of say, like, look, we got lead right now, right? We got a lot of lead, but we've got time, and we've got energy, and we've got whole life in front of us that we can transmute into something better than what we've experienced, you know? And I just went on this search, and I found out that crystals, different crystals that I held, made me feel different types of ways. And I found that, you know, you didn't have to be a part of some gigantic, organized religion to be able to develop a relationship with my creator, or with the universe, or with nature. And when I found Hermeticism, man, it was like, it clicked, and it was my home. I had always had kind of a thing for Hermes and for Thoth, which a lot of people will tell you are bad. And that's just not how I see Hermeticism or alchemy or any of this. Hermes was the scribe of the gods, and he's been written about by every culture. Every culture is written about him. Enoch was the same as Hermes and Thoth. Mercury is what the Romans called him. You know, he was over in Mesoamerica, and he was Varocha, he was Kukulkan, he was Quetzalcoatl, he was Ningishita, is what the Sumerians called him. I have tracked Thoth all over the world, man, and seen the impact that he's left. And so this is what we were gifted, is my belief, that the divine gifted this to Thoth, or to Hermes, or to, you know, whatever you want to call him. And that was passed down to us, which is very similar to like how Freya taught magic or taught divination to Odin, and then Odin gave it to the people. This gift came from somewhere, right? And that's what this is. This is a system to be able to alchemize your experience and turn everything that comes into your path into gold. Because I assure you, everything that happens in this experience can be turned into gold. No matter how hard it is or how bad it hurts, there's always something there. And if we're growing from something, then it's not negative, you know? And people get hung up on this good and bad thing, and that, well, a bad thing happened, so that has to make me feel bad, right? But the thing is, I don't believe that things are good or bad. There's the intention that's associated with an action, and then there's the way that that action is perceived, right? But perception is ultimately an opinion, just like truth is an opinion. So if you, at what temperature does hot water become cold?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Well, it depends how cold you are, doesn't it, to start with?
Exactly. And so if we're going to use 80-degree water as an example, if you come out of 60-degree water and you put your hand in that 80-degree water, it's going to feel warm.
Yeah.
But if you come out of 100-degree water and you stick your hand in that same 80-degree water, it's going to feel cold now, right? So which one is the truth? And does the water change? Is the water changing, or is it just your perception of the water that's changing? Right?
Yeah.
And then how do you use that in life? How do you use that in life? Because these things that happen, if you're standing over here, it might be a really negative thing. But if you're standing over here, you know, and you're looking at it the right way, it might not be so negative. And so what is positive or negative is the way that you allow these things to enter your experience and how you allow them to affect your experience. Because a lot of the times that I grew the most, right, was when my life was the hardest or the most unfavorable. That's when I experienced the most positive change. So at that point, are those things good or are they bad?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, congratulations on your sobriety.
Thank you.
No, it's really inspiring, and to do it on your own, off your own back as well. It's
it was time, man.
Yeah, it's really admirable, and I'm sure a lot of people listening might be, you know, have had similar experience in rough patches, maybe not as long as yours, but you know, who hopefully can take comfort and this sort of positivity that you're generating. And I like the way you describe, again, it's going back to this, it's everything's about perception, and when something shit happens to you, trying to recognize that as an opportunity rather than just something shit happening to you. And like you described these as your most, the times when you grew the most, is I think how you put it.
Right.
I mean, it's just, it's this mind. The big thing is mindset, isn't it? Mindset and perception, and trying to fight these negative thoughts that come into your head and try and turn things around. Because you have to do it on your, you got to do it on your own, haven't you? No one's going to do it for you.
Exactly. And, you know, the game changer for me was I spent my whole life asking, why is this happening to me? Right? Like, why me? What did I do to deserve this? Right? And switching, why is this happening to me, to why did I put myself here? Right? And what can I learn from this? What am I supposed, because I believe that everything happens, you know, I know it sounds really cliche to say that everything happens for a reason. Even if that reason is growth, right? Because I think that everything, there's growth in everything. And I think that everywhere that we are at has a direct correlation to decisions that we made or choices that we made or what we were vibrating, you know, and we can go through the principles here in a minute if you want.
Sure, yeah.
But cause and effect is huge. So like, I always ask myself, why did I put myself here? Right? Why am I here? Why have I chosen to be? When you get a flat tire, it's like, okay, why did I do this to myself? What am I supposed to learn from this? And if the lesson that you're supposed to learn is to make sure that there's air in your spare, or that you have a spare tire, that you have a jack, right? You've still learned something, right? And you're going to make sure that that never happens to you again in your experience.
Right.
So you've grown.
You're taking responsibility. A lot of us,
Exactly.
we're very quick to blame outside influences or outside circumstances without learning to take responsibility for what's happening to ourselves. So that's my takeaway from that sort of lesson.
Exactly. And that's what Hermeticism was for me, was me being able to take responsibility for my experience, right? Because if I'm blaming everyone around me, I can't control everyone around me, right? Yeah. So I'm just along for the ride at that point. And I refuse to just be along for the ride when, you know, it's like, if you were trying to get to work, would you do it from the back seat with somebody else driving, you know, and hope that you ended up where you were trying to get, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's it's taking accountability, and the principles are simple, and we can go through them real quick, but they're powerful, man. And so there's 7 of them, and the first principle is the principle of mentalism. Okay, the principle states that all is mind and the universe is mental. Okay. And that everything in this experience exists in the mind of the all. Okay, so in Hermeticism, the all, or Adam, is the divine, or prime creator, or whatever you want to call this. And so the belief is that everything that exists in the mind of this creator. Okay, the whole experience. So and everything that happens in this experience is a direct result of the mind that precedes it. Okay, so everything that we're experiencing existed in the mind before it existed in our experience. Now, the things that we encounter outside of our experience, whether it's the landscape or something, so that is taking place in the mind of the all, right? And we are just experiencing that because we're co-creators here. This isn't just our experience, right? Our experience is going to overlap with other people's experience, and there's a base experience here that exists in the mind of this prime creator. Or Adam is another way that Hermeticism refers to it, which is cool because you've got Adam. You've got Adam the all, which is Atum. Right. You've got Adam, the first man, which is ADAM, which is the foundation of the population of this whole everybody that exists in the experience. And then you have Adam, ATOM, which is the building block of matter, right? And everything that exists inside this experience. So something phonetically that is a little interesting is you have these 3 atoms that make up this entire experience, right? And so Adam is a very powerful word etymologically. But this principle states that before anything can exist in the physical, it must exist in your mind, right? So this is like manifestation 101 here, is for you to have something exist in your physical reality. First, you have to be able to make it exist in your mental reality, right? And then manifest that and create that through avenues of alchemy, right? Through transmuting the things that you do have into this idea that you have, that you're trying to produce.
So it sounds like imagination.
It's exactly what it is, and that's why I think that's why school starts as early as it does, is kids operate in almost predominantly in theta, right? Which is like a hypnotic state. It's very similar to the state that you get put in when you're hypnotized. And there's instant creation in that kind of a vibration. And so that's why when kids sit down and they've got mud in their cup, but they're having a tea party, like that is real to them. That party that they're having is as real as you or I in their experience. And so we're taught at a very young age to stop that. And that's what we're taught in school is that, no, there's 5 senses, and that's how you perceive everything. And these are the laws of physics, right? and this is what these words mean, and they're teaching you spelling, which is not called spelling by accident. But we're very powerful creators. And a lot of what public education is to me is to convince us that we are small and that we are insignificant and that we are a victim of this experience. We're taught victimhood at a very young age. And so next we've got the principle of correspondence, which this one most people are pretty familiar with. This is where as above, so below, as the universe, so the soul. And so everything on all planes of existence are connected in correspondence. Everything, right? This is where the micro is the macro comes in. The outer is the inner. The everything is the cellular. And this is a very simple one, but a very profound one at the same time, because anything that you create on a small scale is going to be replicated on a grand scheme, right? So as we do anything, we do everything, and that is reciprocated like ripples in a pond, right? And that is now. And so one thing to keep in mind with this is that the mind takes everything as it is, right? And it will recreate exactly what we focus on the most. Now, this is good or bad. See what I'm saying? Yeah. And so if you have which is why the things that we fear, we should try not to think about, right? And that's not to avoid it, but to fear something or to constantly stew on something is giving it power, and that's what you're going to create, right? If that's what you're vibrating, if that's what you have in your mental space, we're creators. So if that's what's in the driver's seat of creation, then that's exactly what you're going to create. And so it's incredibly important to be mindful of what you're manifesting, because you're constantly manifesting and you're constantly transmuting. And so ultimately your frequency determines your experience.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. That makes sense, because you attract what you put out in the world. You know, if you put out a lot of negativity, you're going to attract more negativity, I imagine. That's
what you're going to get. That's all you're going to get. You know, next we have the principle of vibration. So this principle states that nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Okay, so everything, no matter how large or small, is in perpetual motion. It's vibrating at a certain motion, speed, and frequency. And this combination determines the physical or substantial form of any object.
Yeah.
Okay, so
they were into like particle physics then, the hermeticists.
Yeah, this is like ancient. This is where all of it comes from, and people it gets written off. But this Hermeticism gave birth to every Abrahamic religion or every belief system that is still in existence today. This is where all of science came from. All of, like you said, you're talking particle physics, and this is all. What is science? It's trying to understand the way that things are. Why are the things this way?
Yeah.
Right. And so this is the root of all of that. This was man trying to understand this experience at a deeper level, and what makes this thing tick and what makes it talk, you know? And it's a beautiful thing, man.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so this is where transmutation comes into place, is with this principle of vibration. And so when you change your mental state, you change your vibration, and that changes your experience. I mean, it's pretty simple. These are profound things that we're talking about.
It sounds obvious when you say it like that so succinctly, doesn't it?
And that's the thing about Hermeticism, is that we all know this. We're just taught not to practice it. I mean, I tell people to read the Kabbalion, or I post these Hermetic axioms, and people are like, yeah, well, I know. And it's like, then use it.
Right.
You know, then use it. If this was common knowledge and everyone put this into practice, we would have no problems. We really wouldn't. This is how we take control of our most unhappy person that I have ever met before in my entire life, with no control over my experience, over the course of 3 years, to the happiest person that I know, right? Who I enjoy every aspect of this experience, even the stuff that most people would consider bad. And really, this has all happened within the last year or year and a half. It took me a year to figure out I had no idea who I was. That was year 1 of sobriety. Year 2 was me figuring out that it's okay to have no idea who I was. So that was a 2-year process right there. And then it took me a year to figure out who I was. And that's a process that's still evolving every day.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not the person I was when I woke up this morning. I'm not the person I was yesterday. I'm not the person that I was when we started this podcast, because everything that comes into my experience is going to change my vibration, and that vibration is going to shape, you know, my experience.
Yeah.
And so this fluidity and this, what's the word for clay when it's, we need to be malleable, right? And we need to constantly be trying to grow and constantly be more, because complacency is this thing that we get caught up in. And that is the root of all things unhappy, is complacency or compromise or settling.
Stagnation.
Right? That's right. And that's what I was saying earlier. I don't think there's such a thing. I think that if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards, and you're regressing into what your life used to be. And so these things, they're super simple, but they're very empowering when they're put into practice. Next principle is the principle of polarity. And so this states that everything is dual, right? Everything has poles. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Okay. So this was a little bit like we talked about with the water.
Yes. Yeah.
Like good and bad are just varying degrees of the same thing. right?
Yeah, duality.
What changes, exactly.
Yin
What
and yang,
changes is
order
how
and
we
chaos.
view the good or the bad. Exactly. And what we want is somewhere to be, we want to be somewhere in between that. And so what I tell people is the alchemist is the constant. And we're going to get into the principle of rhythm next. And so that will kind of explain what I mean by that.
Right.
But the principle of polarity states that all truths are but half truths. Okay. And all paradoxes may be reconciled. Dark, light.
It goes back to perception again, doesn't it, Tarrant? So like order or chaos, you can't describe one without having knowledge of the other.
Well, and one creates the other, and the other creates the one. You know, you can't have dark without light or good without bad. And when people talk about how can you think that there's that bad doesn't exist or evil doesn't exist, well, here's the thing: like, it's the worst people in the world, right, that are doing just the most vile, disgusting things. Even those things are creating light because one cannot exist without the other. And so even if you do it as practical as like me finding out about all the terrible things that happen in third world countries is making me want to learn more about this and expose this or try to use my energy to improve that. That's dark creating light, right? And it's the bad things that get the people like you or the people like me off our butts and out and trying to actually do something and create change. And so without these terrible people, we wouldn't have good people like the people that are out there creating change right now. And if there would be no need for heroes if there wasn't a bad guy.
Absolutely.
Right? If everything was just good, we'd have no concept of good or bad and things would just be, and we would be unhappy about that. Right? Cool. So we need some sort of context. And so this principle just basically states that dark, light, love, hate, good, bad, hot, and cold are all just varying degrees of the same thing. The difference is determined by the law of vibration. Okay. Some vibrate higher, others on a lower level. So it's just like you and I are the same as, you know, the tree outside. We're just carbon molecules. We're just carbon atoms, right? What the difference is how fast we're vibrating. And those carbon atoms in the tree are vibrating at a different speed than the carbon atoms inside me. And so that's why we're perceived differently with our senses. But it's all just vibration on the largest scale and on the smallest scale. Next, we have the principle of rhythm. So this one states that the pendulum swing manifests in everything. The swing to the right is the swing to the left, and that rhythm compensates. So this basically says that there is rhythm between every pair of opposites. So this is the force that enables one pole to the other, right? For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. For every success, there will be a failure. For every ounce of dark, there will be an ounce of light, right? This is cosmic balance. And so what this is, you have two poles, right? And what I try to use to draw this picture is like you have two poles and we're going to travel back and forth between those poles constantly, right? Which is rhythm, okay? And that rhythm creates vibration. And that vibration is what determines this experience. And so when you can look at things, basically the rhythm that you're creating between these two poles determines your vibration, and that vibration directly determines what you're going to encounter in this experience. Okay. Right. So things aren't good or bad. They just are, right? Some things that lie outside of the control of the alchemist, and those things you just allow them to be, right? They just are. The key is not to let these things affect you.
It kind of sounds similar to how I've had karma described to me before.
It's very similar. It's very similar. And, you know, what I teach is to find a state of indifference, right? To live in the gratitude of the experience, not the ups or the downs inside it, right? So you can still experience tons of gratitude. You can still be happy, but you can be indifferent to everything that's happening around you. You can realize that these things aren't good or bad. And every time that I run to this good side and try to claim this as good, I'm going to get drugged to this bad side because this is what the universe does. Right. And so learning how to just allow things to happen. So the world goes like this, right? Imagine a heartbeat, right? It goes up and down over the top of this line. The alchemist wants to be the baseline. Okay. The constant in the experiment, and all these variables just are, right? And how we perceive those variables dictates our experience. So the next principle is the principle of cause and effect. I think we got two more here.
Mm-hmm.
So everything happens in accordance with law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. Okay. So it's pretty self-explanatory, and it sounds kind of funny when you read it like that, but it's like, these are just these simple principles that we already know, that we don't fully understand or understand or adhere to
or recognize. Yeah, it's like the way you describe chance, it's just so matter of fact and so obvious when you hear it. But you know that if you have something bad happens to you tomorrow, you think, oh bloody hell, what a shit bag of luck that is.
No, man, we did that.
Yeah, I know.
We did that. And so
it's so obvious when you say it like that.
It's just simple, right? And it's so funny because people are like, yeah, I know. And it's like, then use it, then use it. Everybody that I know, everybody that I have met, and everybody that I've read about who has started to work these principles has drastically improved their life. And if you taking things that you already know and putting them into practice is going to drastically improve your life, already know them. That's great. But there's these are just simple, they're simple and they're concise and they're straightforward and they're matter of fact, but they're also just so profound, and the impact that they have is immeasurable. Right. And for me to say something like every cause has an effect and every effect has an underlying cause, which is determined by law. Right. This is taking something that is simple and just taken for granted. Well, yeah, I understand that what I do creates, where I'm going to be. But it's like when you say it like that and you say, this is law, everything that is going to happen in accordance with law. People don't understand that there is this cosmic law that exists. There is this balance. There is this order that is going to be kept. It's going to be kept no matter how you feel about it. Right. Or what kind of triggers this is going to create. The law is going to be kept. And so understanding this principle can help you see that if you understand the consequences of your actions, you can choose what actions to take or not take. Again, very simple, right? But when you think about it that way, and that's the mindset that you're in, right? It can change things. So being the cause, you want to be the cause, not the effect. This makes you the master as opposed to the victim. There is no neutral. This is the law of polarity. We're back to the law of polarity now. Change your polarity with the power of your mind and free will, and you change your experience. Right?
Yeah, excellent.
Last principle is the principle of gender. Okay. So gender is constantly confused with sex.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Sex is a physical manifestation of gender. Okay, but they're not the same thing. They're not synonymous. So gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and its feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. Okay.
Right. So
this is yin and yang.
Sex applies with the sort of duality. There's the duality with sex, whereas gender is more of a spectrum. Is that what we're saying?
We're not. What I'm saying is there's yin and yang, okay, right. Physiologically, but also in everything. So both qualities are simultaneously in everyone, as well as all things, okay? Right. Left and right brain correspond with this, right? Rational versus emotional, giving versus receiving, passive versus aggressive, right? These are genders. These are opposites. Right. And so they're poles, they're polarity, but they're not the same thing as your reproductive organ.
Right. Yeah. That's the physical matter that you're sort of born with, your chromosomes, whatever. Whereas
exactly.
Whereas gender is duality within us all.
Yeah. And how we approach things. Right. So to be masculine is to deliver or to give. Right. To be feminine is to receive or to absorb. Cool, and so every time right now, me speaking is a masculine action. Right. And you absorbing that is a feminine action. Now, that doesn't mean that you're being a girl.
No.
Right. It's just to give or to receive. That's the yin and the yang. And so finding balance between those two poles is what's the key, right? There has to be balance, because without the feminine, the masculine will act without restraint, resulting in chaos. The feminine without the masculine will reflect and fail to do, resulting in stagnation, right? And so the way that these complement each other is what is the key: uniting this yin or uniting this yang, or uniting this yin with the yang. So with feminine and masculine working in conjunction, there is thoughtful action that breeds success. This points out that both actions fulfill each other. The union of opposites is how we truly come into our power as co-creators of this experience. You have to be both, right? And society teaches you this is what men do and this is what women do. And if you're in touch with your emotions, then you're feminine, right? Or you're girly, or, you know, and so society is constructed in a way to keep us from utilizing our creative energies and our creative powers, because if we are dictating our own experience, that experience can't be dictated by the people who are trying to control this place, right? So this is a very scary notion for them.
So absolutely. If you were born a boy and you decide you want to be a nurse, society sort of has a certain view about that. Or if you're female and you decide you want to be a bricklayer, there are certain societal norms, cultural norms, which try and persuade people out of that, when what we should be seeking is balance in these things. Exactly.
And I think that there's a lot to be said about a lot of the major religions are very matriarchal, right? And
matriarchal?
Patriarchal. Yeah, you caught me there. They're all, the men are in charge, right? Which it hasn't always been this way. If you read about are you familiar with the Gnosians?
Gnosians, is that different from the Gnostics?
It's where the Gnostic belief system originated. So the Gnosians, this is KN Gnosis, or Gnosis was the name of the town. KNO SS
US Knossos. It sounds Greek. It sounds Greek.
And it's right in that area. I can't remember what the name of that bay is where they're all at, but it's right smack dab in there. And what these people believed was that we lived in a false matrix. Okay. And the women were in charge. Right. And so the sacred bloodlines were passed down through the women, which is something that it intrigues me to think about. Like, maybe that still happens. And maybe like the women are actually the ones in charge. Like, even maybe it's the president's wives that are the ones that are carrying the bloodlines that these people are so concerned about preserving. But it's crazy how an idea like that, like a matrix, right, could have been. Gnosis was 10,000 years ago.
Wow, really?
Right.
I'm not familiar with this civilization at all.
It's absolutely incredible. And so what has happened is the man has been empowered, right? And this is not me going feminist or anything here, because I think that each gender has, a woman is supposed to be what a man's not, and vice versa. I think there's been way too much time competing with each other.
We have an equally valuable role to play.
Right. But that has kind of been taken away. And, my argument for that is, like, if a man is supposed to be the warrior, right? If this guy is supposed to take his battle axe and walk into that dude's yard and lop off that dude's head, right? He's supposed to be a little crazy. Now, is that same person who's supposed to be a little crazy the best person to sit down and make decisions about whose head gets lopped off? Or should maybe there be somebody different with a different set of traits and a different set of skills and a different set of motivations be making those changes, right? And this is not to say that I believe that women should be in charge either. I think that both of these poles and meeting somewhere in the middle is critical.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the same with everything is the key is in balance, right? Whether it's, you don't want things to be too good because then they're going to fall, right? You don't want things to be, you want to find this happy medium, and that's what the symbol Baphomet is to me, right? We are taught that, and I try to bring this up often because that's a symbol that's very heavily demonized and attacked. And I was taught, for example, that was the same as Satan or the devil or Lucifer. Is that's what the Baphomet was?
I mean, things like this, Tarrant won't help. This is something I'm reading at the moment.
Yeah, not super helpful.
No, right on the front cover there.
but a symbol is only as powerful as what it's charged with or what it is driving it, right? And so you could take the propeller, for example, right? And that was a symbol of peace and love and prosperity. And then you had the Nazis take it and flip it over and then associate a different intention with that. And if you're familiar with sigil magic and how that works, you take a sign or a symbol, and then when you charge that, it becomes a living, it's an actual entity now that you have created. And so what that entity is created with is the energy and the intention and the belief that's associated with it when it's created.
Yeah, it's charged.
And so, right. And so I think you do the same thing with a symbol. You empower that symbol and you do that collectively and you do that individually. But the Baphomet, the Templars worshipped, and it's got the one hand up and the one hand down. It's up and it's down. It's left and right. It's dark and light. It's got the breasts, but it's also got the caduceus that's making the phallus in its lap, right? So it's feminine and it's masculine. And so what it meant to the Templars and what it meant to me is middle way, right? And middle way is something that we should be seeking all the time. There's no pole that is the right side. There's never a pole that's where you want to exist, you know? And another example that I try to use a lot is like politics. I'm a political atheist. I don't get into any of that anymore, but people are so caught up on the left and the right. Right? They've created two poles, and everything that they say on the news is polarizing. It's going to put you in one camp or the other, right? And you've got the news spending all of their time and energy making the left mad at the right and making the right mad at the left.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about the head of this bird that's dictating what both of the wings do.
Yeah.
You know? And
left wing, right wing, same bird. I said that last week on this podcast.
Exactly. And it's like we're caught up on the poles.
Yeah.
Right? We're not in the middle. We're not in that balance. We're not in that order.
Yeah, it's divide and conquer, isn't it?
That's exactly what it is. We've been doing it for thousands of years, man. If people divided are easier to control. And that's where I think all these boxes come in. And that's why I think they've got all these social justice warriors now, and why they've got, and they're separating everyone. So if if this is who you are and they decide that this person is not supposed to get along with this person, now they've polarized you, right? And they're creating all these subcategories so that they can create other subcategories that those don't get along with. The more ways that they can separate you and divide you, the more ways they have to keep you isolated, right? Because where we're powerful is our creative forces are very powerful on our own. But when you take shared intention, right, now you're talking something very powerful, right? And Dr. Emoto did some work on this with the miracle of water when he was I don't know if you're familiar with
I was
Emoto's
just gonna
work.
say, who's this?
He basically was studying the molecular structure of water, and he would do certain things to it. He found out that we can talk to our water, right? And that if you look at a glass of water and you tell it, and it sounds really silly until you see the science that this guy has put together. If you tell your glass of water that you love it, right, or something positive, you're beautiful, or I love you, the structure will change into these beautiful, symmetrical, aesthetically pleasing shapes. Now, on the contrary, if you tell it that it's ugly, or you say I hate you, it's going to make these obtuse, asymmetrical, unattractive shapes. And so the structure of this water, and what are we, right? We're water.
90% water,
yeah. So us ingesting this structured water is going to alter the structure of our water, right? When you stand next to someone and you get weird vibes, or when somebody says something that you're about to think, like, that water is the medium, right? And if you are able to change the structure of a glass of water in front of you by thinking or looking at it or talking to it, then you are absolutely capable of changing the structure in another person, right? And the argument could be made that we're all just fish anyways, right? That air is just less dense water, but it's still water. They're made up of the same thing, right? And so
Yep.
if water is this medium that transfers vibration, which is my belief, I think that all of this is basically just less dense water. And that is what is the vessel for the ether or for the vibration or for everything to kind of use as a conduit to travel and to transmute through this experience. But there's energy all around us all the time, right? And there's my creative energy, and there's your creative energy, and there's the energies that are already here from whatever you call the prime creator. And what magic is, what real magic is just controlling those energies, right? And directing those energies in a way that is going to create a more positive experience for you to exist inside. I think that we have movies like Harry Potter and stuff like that fantasticize it to keep you from realizing that magic is right in front of you all the time. And the definition of magic is just it's creating change and conformity with will by using methods not understood by modern science. And once you really look into modern science, we don't understand a lot.
No, I think there's a famous stat. I think it's something like we can account for modern science rather can account for, I think, 6% of all matter and energy in the universe.
Right. Well, and that's because they won't acknowledge spirit.
No.
Right. They won't acknowledge or whatever you want to call it, the ether. I do a lot of work with organite.
Oh, cool. You should check out our, we did, one of our first guests who we didn't know was a guy called Peter Jones. And he heads up, he's like the chief orgonomist in the UK, and he happens to live 5 minutes down the road from me. Yeah, he lives
that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I'll send you a link, and he was telling us all about Wilhelm Reich and orgonomy and stuff. It was really cool.
I studied Reich's work a lot, and it kind of, whether you want to call it chi or ki or mana or prana or vril or ether or orgone, whatever you want to call it, there's this energy. There's this force that is everywhere, and it's renewable, and it's unlimited. And Tesla wrote about it a lot, and it's there, and it's ours to use. And so I think a big part of alchemy is being able to utilize this universal force that's around us all the time.
So do you think the orgone energy is analogous to the Principe?
The prima materia.
Prima materia, sorry.
It's yeah. I think
different names for the same thing.
I think that everybody has been talking about the same thing.
Yeah, got you.
Since the beginning, and I think that on a spiritual scale, I think that no matter what religion you're talking about, you're telling a story of two brothers, right? A story, whether it's Cain and Abel, or whether it's Enki and Enlil, or wherever you want to go. There's whether it's Jesus and Thomas, there's a story of duality, right? There's dark and there's light, or there's good and there's evil, and so I believe that the same story has been being told since the beginning of time. And it's a story of finding that balance between duality, or finding the duality and then embracing it and rising above it. Yeah. And that is the foundation of all spirituality to me, is just embracing this plane and its poles, and utilizing them to vibrate at a frequency of unconditional love.
Yeah.
And I think, I think that's what it's all about,
I concur completely. Was that all have we done all 7 of the Hermetic principles?
We did all 7 of the Hermetic principles. Well, and isn't it crazy how simple they are? Oh no,
yeah, it is. It's mind blowing. And I guess that's why this sort of ancient wisdom has managed to stick around for so long. Despite, I mean, if you just look at the history of Wilhelm Reich and how they, for lack of a better word, came after him.
Absolutely.
Where people, in a former lifetime, Tarrant, you would have been labeled a heretic.
Well,
for what you're saying.
To some, I could be labeled that in this lifetime.
Well,
I live in Oregon, so I don't know if you're familiar with Kate Brown over there, but she's turned everybody into a terrorist.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've talked about it before, how there is, in our sort of podcast community, alternative media community, there is definitely a tension between Christianity and the Abrahamic religions and a lot of the, I don't want to say New Age because it's the wrong term, but the sort of hermeticist slash New Age slash
absolutely and
spirituality community.
My opinion on that is, I believe that as we're on poles, I think that spirituality and religion are poles. I don't think that you can be both. I think that you're one or you're the other. And I think that to be that the spiritual journey is empowerment of self, right? An empowerment, a direct connection with your higher power or your creator or the divine or whatever you want to call that in your school of thought. Whereas religion is empowerment of the group or of the person at the head of the group or of the machine or whatever you want to call the, because I was taught that the word occult was the same thing as a cult. Right?
Rather than hidden.
Right. And so, and I personally see a lot of cult-like behavior on the side that was telling me that everything outside of that was a cult.
Well, yeah. How do you define a cult? What's the difference between a cult and a religion? Some would say it's just the passage of time.
The numbers. It's the amount of people that you've got, Yeah. And so I think that a big part of it is people have worked very hard to keep us from coming into our creative abilities, right? And that it's hard. We're back to control. I think that it's hard to control a group of people who are all independent thinkers and critical thinkers and questioning everything and saying, no, I do not accept this as my reality. I'm going to create a more favorable reality, as opposed to this is the way that it is and this is the way that it was going to be, and you're not going to question this, or you're going to be whatever you were told was going to happen. I thought I was going to be struck by lightning for talking about stuff like this for most of my life, and so there's a structure of fear and of guilt and of these things, or of love and of empowerment and of freedom and sovereignty. And that's why the religion thing never worked for me. Was anything that I wasn't allowed to question or try to understand on a deeper level.
Yeah, it's an instant red light, that, isn't it? Instant alarm bells.
Exactly. I think that things are meant to be questioned. And
absolutely.
When I speak or when I hand out philosophy, like, I don't expect anyone to take what I say as unquestionable truth. Nothing that comes out of my mouth is dogma, right? This is my truth, right? This is what has worked for me in my experience. And it's something that I want to share with other people so that they can try to help improve their experience. And these people that reach out to talk about this kind of stuff, they realize, like, I'm not in a position to be able to fix anybody's life or improve anybody's life, right? I can show you a set of tools that you possess, right? And give you the motivation or the confidence to pick them up and start using them. But that's not me improving your experience. That's you improving your experience. And so I think a big part of what starts people on this path is them being ready to hold yourself accountable and being ready to put in work and not get people want an instant exchange. They want to say, okay, well, I ate healthy today, so I want to lose 10 pounds today. you know, and that's not how this works. And what makes manifestation hard for people is I believe that how manifestation works is creating something in the mind and experiencing gratitude for it while it exists in this mind, in this mental state, and that your gratitude for that in its mental state is what produces that and what manifests that on a physical level. Right? So everything exists here first. And once you can experience gratitude for it in the mind, it will manifest in the physical. Right? But people have a hard time experiencing gratitude for something that they can't hold in their hand. Right? Because if I can't perceive it with these 5 senses, then it's not real, is what we're taught. Okay. But what is real? Right? What makes something real is the fact that I can smell something, or I can touch something, or I can taste something. Are these 5 senses what determines reality? You know, or what constitutes real? If this wooden desk that's right here, I can feel it and I can taste it and I can smell it, but is it going to be here in 100 years? Right? And is it any different than the molecules that are vibrating inside me? So am I the desk, and is the desk me, and am I real? Right?
Yeah.
You know, to ask whether something's real or not, it's just like an alien. You know, what's an alien? People ask me if I believe in aliens. Well, define alien. You know, if I go to Mexico, I'm an alien, right? So, like, we gotta ask ourselves what we're really asking ourselves before we can get to the meat and bones of it.
Absolutely.
You know.
Well, Tarrant, we've blown through an hour already. I could talk to you all night, but I'm gonna have to let you get on with your day.
Well, anytime you want to do this again, let me know. This was great.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure the eavesdroppers will enjoy it too. And you're such a positive sort of. Your positivity is infectious, and your story as well is incredibly inspiring. So thanks for sharing your time with us.
I appreciate that, man. I am very, very grateful for the opportunity to be heard by new ears, and I hope that it motivates some people to do some things, man.
Yeah.
They're more than welcome to reach out.
Where can people find you? Where shall I put links in the show notes? Right now,
I live on Instagram,
right.
And I am Hatter Will Happen. Hatter_will_happen. I've got a podcast in the works that is coming. So that's something to look forward to. That'll be called Tea with the Hatter. But man, my thing is I want to be the person that if I can make it out of what I was in, right? If I can make it out of that experience, those lows of the lows, and granted, my life's not perfect by any measure, right? But I am thankful and grateful every day that I wake up, and I'm excited about what I'm going to be able to do with this. And as opposed to looking at things, everything's a challenge now, and it's just something that I can grow from. And I want to share that with people and everybody who has, kind of humbled themselves before themselves, because that's what it is. You're not humbling yourself in front of some power asking to be saved, right? You're saying, okay, let's save ourselves, right? The only person who's going to save me is me. And that's an empowering and it's a pretty special thing to take control of your experience and to start to dictate that experience. And so if there's a way I can share that with people have questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, ideas, I would love to hear from everybody. I answer all my DMs. I make time for it. So
cool.
Yeah, man, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
No problem. It's been great. And I'll put all the links in the show notes to your Insta and whatnot, so people can check out. You've been doing some videos, I noticed, on there, explaining different things and aspects in your perspective. So, it's been great. Just stay on the line for us while I play myself out, and we'll catch you on the flip side. All right, Tarrant.